Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Calm Lunch and Learn. My name is Jake Kolonowski. I'm a Coastal Resilience Coordinator for the Wisconsin Coastal Management Program, and I'm the new coordinator for Calm. For those who are new to the group, Calm is the collaborative action for Lake Michigan coastal resilience, which is a community of practice focused on addressing coastal hazards across Wisconsin's Lake Michigan shoreline. Today we have Jeff DuMez, GIS Coordinator and Land Information Officer for Brown County Planning and Land Services Department, and Jim Giglierano, a retired Geographic Information Officer with the Wisconsin Department of Administration, to discuss their work on the OneMap project. Before we hear from them, I just want to note that this event is being recorded, and if you have any questions throughout the webinar, there's going to be a short Q&A after the presentation. You can also put your questions in the chat at any time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff and Jim if you want to share your slides.
Hey, yes, let me share my screen. Let's see. All right, can everyone see this slide okay?
Yep.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for the introduction, Jake. Jim, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Otherwise, just hello, everybody.
Yeah, hello. We roll into this here. So we'll just mention we only have 20 minutes, so please, if you have any questions, put it in the chat, or we have our email addresses included at the end of this as well, and we will respond to you then. So I'll probably let Jim talk mostly about this, but there's the before OneMap. We'd kind of like to do the before and after. So Jim, did you want to kind of go through these a little bit?
So to sort of understand where we came from for this project, you know, over the last 20, 30 years, GIS data has sort of evolved. Mostly sort of starting from, you know, old maps that were digitized by hand, and you know, various agencies took responsibility for putting these together, mostly USGS, but also others that we'll see in the coming example. And so this is the way we've sort of labored for the last couple decades of trying to figure out how to make these different things that were sort of done all by themselves and maybe with different ideas in mind. So next slide.
There it goes.
There you go. Okay. And like I said, you know, a good example is this is the old USGS 24K topo maps, which were eventually digitized and made available, and so they kind of were the basis for a lot of things, you know, leading up to you know, the early 2000s. Then there's, you know, kind of the idea of you know, doing your own stuff with low resolution imagery that we had available. And, you know, that's gradually evolved over time. And now with the counties doing 3-inch and so forth photography, it's gotten a lot higher res. And so our ability to look at things on the ground has gotten much improved. Next slide. And along with that, of course, is LiDAR and satellite, which increases the timing of the imagery. But there's still kind of this thing of you know, things being done by separate agencies and in sort of a separate manner. And a good example of this, and you know, our hydrography layer is now LiDAR based, and wetlands and land cover are also starting to be based on LiDAR and satellite imagery, but they're a little, you know, they're still coming along. So, but the overall, we're trying to make things better, right? Okay, next. So, is that you?
Sure. So we at Brown County were thankfully awarded a grant on working with state DOA and coastal management, but the grant ultimately came through NOAA, this BIL capacity grant. And basically, here at the county, what we did is we RFP'd project, and we ended up contracting with NV5 Geospatial, who then also subcontracted with St. Mary's University for part of this project. But between NV5 and St. Mary's, they are using our LiDAR, using all that high resolution GIS and remote sense data that we have, and we're basically building OneMap for several watersheds. And we had some goals in mind, and some of them I'll get into a little bit further, but another big one was producing much better GIS data that can help support site-specific habitat restoration and other conservation efforts. So we're calling this a pilot project right now, but we have a lot of the area completed. Originally, we started with 3 watersheds, Duck Creek, East River, and Fox River in Brown County, and spilling into Outagamie County. I have a graphic coming up next. Because we feel that was a success, we received that data, analyzed it. We think it looks really great. We are also expanding this year to include some of our northern watersheds, Swamico River and Gilson Creek. This whole area is generally characterized by low elevation relief, previously glaciated, but also it's a mix of urban, suburban, and rural farmland areas. So we feel it's a good mix. Plus, we have the lakeshore component, the coastal component as well. So here are the original watersheds. The Brown County outline is sort of obscured by this, but it does expand into Outagamie County quite a ways. And now with what we're doing up here in the Swamico River watershed, we're expanding into Oconto and Shawano counties as well. So just a few, splash this screen up here. I'm not going to go through every detail, but for those of you who are interested, here are some of the elevation-derived hydrography technical details. Accuracy, we're looking again at about a 7-foot horizontal and a 3-foot vertical. So this is a 3D layer, by the way. We're also looking at flow characteristics and other information that we can tag as vectors into our GIS data set. So here's just a quick overview screenshot of what we've produced, or what NV5 has produced for us as far as the elevation-derived hydrography, again, all from LiDAR. This next slide shows just sort of the before and after again. The old 24,000 scale USGS quad map hydro. This is this blue line right here, and how it plots GIS zoomed in. And you can see, water we know doesn't flow uphill. That's kind of what it's showing here. But what's happening now with the new LiDAR EDH from OneMap is you can sort of see the hillshade background, LiDAR-based hillshade. It's following that digital elevation model super precisely all over the place. So again, just a much more accurate thing that we can use for local projects and much more site-specific projects. Real briefly too, just a few wetland details. We are looking at this instead of right now the DNR has been involved, but we're looking at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service National Wetlands Inventory standard for this project, just because, again, as a pilot, we are hoping that this expands not only throughout Wisconsin, but beyond. If we can test out the data and everybody thinks it looks good, and so far it really does, but we had big goals for this, but we did go with that USFS watershed model. But again, here's just some of the quick accuracies on that. Screenshot showing where we've mapped wetlands, the types of wetlands we've included, which include these freshwater emergent. And I've got one more screenshot later on, but one more thing on the technical details for the land cover. We are using some of NOAA's standards. The specification is a CCAP, land covers 1, 2, and 3. Accuracy requirements you can see, and I've got a couple of detailed, here's one of the detailed screenshots that'll show you can see Highway 41, 141 right here in the interchange, and then some of the detailed wetland class or land cover classifications that we've included in there. all satellite and aerial photo derived, along with meshing this all together with hydrography and wetlands. So all of this is really coming together at a large scale. One of the things I just want to mention briefly too is that our land cover is a 3D. It includes a third dimension that we were able to pull from LiDAR. So for example, tree canopy height is coded into all of these polygons, and along with some general tree type, forest type classifications. And you can see even in some cases the individual polygons are down to the individual tree level if you're kind of looking around this home up here. So Jim, did you want to?
Sure.
Jump in?
Just to sort of back up a moment. The one thing we were really, no, not the slide, the people talking. The thing that we're really trying to get at here is, we're mainly working on 3 federal layers. The hydro is a USGS standard, the NWI is a Fish and Wildlife standard, and the CCAP is a NOAA standard. And in the good old world, all of these things would be, sort of done by these agencies. And they'd be using different imagery, they'd be different vintage, maybe different techniques and things. And what you would have is just take an example of just a water, which is a part of all 3 of those things. And what you end up with is sort of 3 different views of that land feature. And what we're trying to get at with the OneMap concept is that open water, as an example, would be all mapped pretty much the same, representing the same area at least, and done at the same time, done with the same imagery. And so when you start putting these different layers together, then you have you're better able to see results that are common to all 3. So that's kind of what we're getting at. Go ahead.
Yeah. So from a local county or local government example, when we're looking at ESAs, environmentally sensitive areas, which we do in Brown County Planning and Land Services Department, and some of our goals with that, obviously protect waterways, identify, we buffer around streams and so forth to create these setbacks for construction. And I guess we, using less accurate 24,000 scale maps, when you're using that old stuff at a large scale, really doesn't instill a lot of confidence when you're working with landowners, when they see how inaccurate the old maps were. And we had done some work prior to OneMap to sort of tighten up that accuracy a little bit. But when we start creating those setback buffers and shoreland zoning buffers and other things like that, we definitely like to have the accuracy that comes from OneMap. And what we've seen, even with our sort of county improved hydro layer that we've done before we started OneMap, that we missed some things, right? Because it wasn't truly elevation derived hydrography, and we found some very good cases where we've brought in the OneMap data and it proved to be even better than what we had at the county level, which has been helping us all over in the department in terms of our environmental review, permitting, and that sort of thing. Another nice thing we really like about these new hydro layers is not just the streams. It includes ditches and all sorts of areas where water collects. Another example would be our part of the ESA process, environmental review process, is our wetland layer, which now we're able to, we still use DNR's layer, of course, as our sort of de facto standard, right? But we're looking at the OneMap wetlands and starting to ascertain, what are we seeing? Are we seeing more wetlands maybe, or fewer? And just starting to use that as a comparison, really trying to get at where those wetlands are. And we have seen in places where field, boots on the ground delineated wetlands very closely matched what was produced by OneMap. And so we're pretty happy with what we're seeing there. So here's just an example of this is the old NWI map layer. You can see sort of these coarse polygons as opposed to the new wetlands derived from OneMap, and how much more detail there is present in those classifications. And then I'll mention the other thing, habitat restoration planning. Somebody else might want to jump in on this, but we're looking to use this data for much more accurate projects or as data to support those projects.
And
Jim,
here's just a little example, kind of the same example as before. Looking at the good old WISC-LAN 2 land cover data, which is kind of our standard for the rest of the state, and now kind of looking at the 1 meter land cover that we get from the CCAP layers. And if you're doing some kind of a coastal habitat evaluation, then you're very you're supposedly much more able to sort of zoom in, and especially considering, say, the impervious surfaces that are nearby, like the interstates there and the streets and the pavement. Those all feed into the bay, and those are going to have an impact on the coastal habitat, and you're probably going to be better able to sort of quantify those. If you're developing a score for different properties to see which ones you want to protect, then maybe you've got some better ways to kind of zoom in and look at smaller and smaller features that can provide a better look at what's around these nice areas. So I think that's our last slide. Yeah,
it is. So we're just at 18 minutes, so we have some time for questions.
Great, thanks, Jeff and Jim. Yeah, we have a little time for questions. So if people have them, they can either put them in the chat or they can raise their hand and come off mute.
And I'll note here that it says Jim is retired. I think he retired, about 6 months ago or so, but he's been graciously helping and volunteering on his own time to help continue to support this project. And so I'm grateful for that. Okay, I see some questions. Yeah.
Yeah, we have some questions in the chat. So has the CCAP data been verified by sampling on the ground?
So to answer that, we did look at some data from Brown County's conservation program, land and water conservation program. We looked; they collected some pretty detailed ground data for crops and residues and cover crops and things like that. And our CCAP layers sort of break it down into different types of agriculture, pasture, a couple of row crop areas, and we got some really good numbers out of there. Probably I would say in the high 90s, but it wasn't anything like a full ground truth verification process.
No, and I've been doing sort of looking at some of the forestry, their tree cover types, and nothing very scientific, but noting, just from my local knowledge, areas that I feel it's a pretty accurate product to, but again, nothing scientifically documented at this point. As far as where and when we can access the data, we have not widely distributed it yet. We're still in sort of the review phase. We have been getting the data out to agencies or others who are interested in seeing it. I certainly don't think we have a problem with sharing that data more widely at this point. And we've been using the SharePoint link at this time, but there are other ways. I guess if you want to email me at the email address on the screen there, I can certainly set you up with a link for the download. I believe that would be okay at this point. Again, just remember it's a pilot project. We probably still have some metadata to finish up and a few other details. Things may change a little bit yet going forward.
The question about the WISC land cover data, no, we haven't done any kind of change. We have looked at how they sort of compare in a general sense, but nothing very fancy. And to answer Howard's question about the CCAP restrictions, I think so what he's referring to is there's some restrictions. There's 3 layers of CCAP data that were done by another company, and they were just sort of handed over to us for this project. And as far as I know, we don't have any restrictions on it. There's been no discussion about that. I don't think they actually changed it very much, so I don't think there'd be any problem because they used it to create a new layer. They've just incorporated those into the land cover 2 and land cover 3. So it hasn't been a topic of discussion.
Yeah, I have a question. So you talked about how, it's a pilot project and you hope that it can expand to other places in Wisconsin and maybe outside the state. What type of, who do you see using this map, or what type of groups do you think this would be useful for?
Well, we were aiming at Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, we would like to integrate the data locally and sort of showcase it here, and then with the idea that perhaps other agencies might, look to this, and if there's sufficient funding, that that other, I guess, counties and perhaps even some state agencies might be interested in kind of this, build it and they will come idea.
It does sort of follow the build it once, use it many times kind of idea, which is kind of one of the core tenets of public GIS data. So we're these layers aren't things that are brand new in concept. They've been around for 20 years or more, and but really what we were exploring was how to do them maybe more efficiently, but at least more so that you could do more analytical type work quicker, because you didn't have to go waiting for all these other layers to show up.
Thanks. Any other questions from the group?
Well, thank you all for joining us and watching our presentation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you both for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing and being able to present today. I put your emails in the chat, but just keep in mind Jim is retired. So yeah. I will also put my email in the chat if you have more questions about Calm or getting involved with Calm. And yeah, we should keep an eye out for our newsletters and future events.
Okay.
Yeah, so thanks again.
Yep. Thank you for having us.